So as studied earlier, the cerebral cortex consists of outer gray matter, that is the cerebral cortex, and inner white matter. Within the white matter of the cerebrum, there are many masses of gray matter, which we referred as the subcortical gray matter. It includes basal nuclei, thalamus, hypothalamus, and limbic system. Today we will learn about the basal nuclei and its parts. It consists of three parts. The first part is the corpus striate. So where is the corpus striatum located? So it is having a caudate nucleus and a lentiform nucleus. This is a transverse section through the cerebral hemisphere at the level of the head of the caudate nucleus. The caudate nucleus is having, it's an arched mass of gray matter consists of head, body and tail. Head is the anterior expanded part and forms the floor of the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So this is the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. This is the anterior horn of the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle, and it forms this head of the caudate nucleus, which forms the head of the caudate nucleus, which forms the floor of the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle. This is the head of the caudate nucleus, which forms the floor of the anterior horn of the lateral ventricle, and the body extends backwards. That is not in this view, and the body of the caudate nucleus that extends backwards from head, and it forms the floor of the central part of the lateral ventricle. Tail runs downwards and forwards along the roof of the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. So this is the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. This is the posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. Below the posterior horn is the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. Actually, which I have marked now, is the posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. So below is the inferior horn, that is also not in this view. So here in this view you can see the anterior horn and the posterior horn of the lateral ventricle. The part of the caudate nucleus which is visible in this view is the head of the caudate nucleus, but it has a head, body and tail. Body and tail is not visible in this view, and also tail ends in a gray matter called amygdaloid body. And then the lentiform nucleus. It is a biconvex mass of gray matter placed lateral to the internal capsule. So what is internal capsule? It's a V-shaped white matter which is present between the lentiform nucleus and the thalamus. So this is the thalamus, and then the V-shaped mass which is having an anterior limb. This is the anterior limb, and the bend is known as genu, and this is the posterior limb. This is the thalamus, and this is the lentiform nucleus. This entire area is the diencephalon, and the part which is close to the third ventricle, that is the thalamus, and this is the lentiform nucleus, which is again subdivided into two parts. They are medial and lateral parts. So the lateral larger part is the outer lateral large part is known as the putamen, and inner medial smaller part is known as globus pallidus. So lentiform nucleus is covered. It is formed made of two nucleus. That is the outer lateral larger putamen and inner medial smaller globus pallidus. And lentiform nucleus is covered laterally by an external capsule. So this is a thin band of white matter. That is the external capsule, and medially by the posterior limb of the. This is the posterior limb of the inner capsule, and above it is related to the corona radiata, the radiating fibers from the cerebral cortex, functional areas of the cerebral cortex, and below it is separated from the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle. And there is a thin sheet of gray matter which is present external or lateral to the external capsule, that is the claustrum. It's a thin sheet, not this much thick. I am not able to draw it as thin, so you should so thin band of gray matter lying in the outer zone of the external capsule, that is the claustrum. So these are the parts of the subcortical gray matter. It includes the amygdaloid body also, and that is a part of limbic system, as we already learned about the amygdaloid body in the limbic system, and it is present in the anterior part of the roof of the inferior horn of the lateral ventricle, and it is related to the tail of the caudate nucleus, and it is